Hi guys, Scott here from Tepper's Paranormal and welcome back to another video. So last night I went to Torquay to watch Most Haunted, the stage show. And I basically just wanted to give a little review, talk about what happened, talk about the show, and generally just, let you know how it went. So the show took place in the Princess Theatre in Torquay, quite an old theatre dating back to 1961. The venue is said to be haunted, which I think is a theme for all of the venues on the Most Haunted stage show tour. So I got settled in my seat and then the show started. Yvette came out on stage first as the host for the evening. She introduced the other members of the team that were in attendance. In this case, it was Carl, Stu and Glenn. I'm not sure whether these team members are consistent across the entire tour, but personally I was very happy with the turnout as these are probably my favourite members of the Most Haunted team. The show itself was 2 hours long, with a 30-minute interval in between. And part one started off with Yvette just welcoming everybody, talking a bit about the show, what it was going to be, and generally explaining the format of the night. So to start with, in the first half, they showed clips of previous episodes of Most Haunted, some of the more famous and infamous moments of the show, and then afterwards they would talk about it, ask questions, and take questions from the audience. Now personally, I do think some big moments from Most Haunted's history were missing from this, but I understand that obviously there's been a lot of episodes and they can't have done everything. However, some of the moments in question were really good, and some really key moments that I think really define Most Haunted. With one episode in particular that I really enjoy being the episode where Glenn gets a chair thrown at him. Now I will say at this point, the Most Haunted team did really well on stage presenting. Yvette and Carl were both very funny, with Carl bringing a really light tone to the evening, making a lot of jokes and generally making everyone feel comfortable. Yvette obviously hosting very well, and then Stuart and Glenn were also both there and really just bringing the Most Haunted element to it, answering questions and interjecting where necessary. After the interval we got onto a slightly more interactive element. There was a Ouija board on stage, and Carl and Glenn went out into the crowd to pick 4 people to join them on stage and take part in a Ouija board. Members of the audience were chosen from all around the theatre, which I thought was really good, as the theatre had an upper level which would have been really easy to avoid for ease of access, but Yvette made sure to pick somebody from the upper level of the theatre as well. One thing I will point out, and I don't know if it was intentional, is that one of the people selected from the crowd is a part of the Most Haunted Experience crew, which I know from listening to the people around me raised a little bit of suspicion towards the legitimacy of the Ouija board, but as I'll go on to discuss, that may not have made much of a difference. They then showed some more clips on the screen behind and again answered some questions, talked generally about it and gave their thoughts on it. There was a very heartwarming moment where Carl got a little bit emotional talking about his daughter Mary on the screen. After a few more clips, Glenn and Carl went out into the audience once again to pick some more members. This time the 4 members selected would go on a little mini investigation with Carl and Stu into the depths of the theatre. As these members were selected around, unfortunately I didn't get picked. And then these audience members went off with Stu and Carl, and we could follow them on the screen behind, which now had a live camera following the other members on it. With this, Yvette began the Ouija board. She gave a prayer in Latin to bless and protect those at the table, and then began asking questions. So for the Ouija board, you had 4 members of the audience, Glenn and Yvette. Glenn and Yvette were not really taking part in the Ouija board, which is good because obviously that adds a little bit of legitimacy. Again, there was a member of the Most Haunted Experience crew there, which I do not believe was influencing it in any real significant way, but, it does feel a little bit suspicious. As the Ouija board started, they asked the spirits if they were connected to any specific seat number. One of the numbers came out, and the person in that seat joined the Ouija board on stage. And after that, not a whole lot happened, to be honest with you. A few more seat numbers were spout out on the Ouija board, but nobody from the audience was in those seats, so it wasn't that interesting. And generally there wasn't a lot of intelligent response from the Ouija board, which to me adds a little bit of credibility, but did get some laughs from the audience as Yvette was trying to encourage the spirits to interact, getting a little bit more aggressive with each ask. During the Ouija board, we kept cutting backstage to Carl, Stu and the members of the audience who were doing a mini investigation. Stuart thought he heard something down the end of a corridor. They went and investigated, but there was nobody there. And then there was knocking on a wall. Now, they did some call and response, they did some knocks and asked the knocking to respond, and although it was difficult to hear in the auditorium, when Carl held the mic up against the wall and one of the members of the audience did a relatively complex rhythmic pattern of knocks, a strange knocking from within the wall or within the mirror seemed to reply and mimic it. Now, we couldn't really hear this in the auditorium too clearly, but the members of the audience, when they came back on the stage afterwards, very clearly said they could hear it and that was happening. Personally, I believe the members of the audience, they seemed quite trustworthy, they didn't seem like plants, they seemed quite legitimate, and obviously I'm very disappointed I wasn't selected myself. That pretty much came to the end of the show. There were then a few Q&As, where again, Carl and Glenn headed out into the crowd, took some questions, and the crew answered them to the best they could. One of these questions got quite emotional, where somebody in the audience asked if they get a lot of good spirits. This led to Carl mentioning Yvette's dad, who unfortunately has passed away, but who Yvette says she's closer with now than she was when he was alive, and talking about the way she interacts with and how he guides her in her investigations and just in life in general. Yvette got quite teary here, which was quite emotional to watch, to be honest. Another audience member then asked if they could talk about what happened with Derek Acorah. This led to a very quick reply of Carl saying that he faked stuff, they fired him, which I thought was quite good. It sort of hit the nail on the head. It cleared out that topic quite quickly without making it awkward or without having to go into any real detail, and I thought that was a really good way of handling the question. They then talked about psychics and why they don't really work with them, because most of them aren't believable. They generally don't feel that psychics are that trustworthy. And then that pretty much brought the show to an end. Yvette then showed us a photo from her birthday many years ago, where you can see an apparition that she says is her father. I thought that was quite interesting. It was good to see a bit of evidence that hadn't been seen before. Do I believe it was her father? I don't know. Without knowing what he looks like, I couldn't really see it myself, but I could sort of see a form of a person without actually seeing any real detail. But Yvette clearly believes that's her father, and who am I to question her? So yeah, that brings me to the end of this video. If you get the chance, I'd strongly recommend going to watch Most Haunted the stage show. I'll put links to their website down below, and I'll also put their poster on the screen now so you can see where they're touring and when. If you do go, let me know in the comments down below. And yeah, all in all, I thought it was a really enjoyable experience. I'd strongly recommend it, and I found it was really good to see the way the crew interacts, not being recorded and not on TV or on YouTube. They're all obviously very entertaining personalities, and just seeing them together like this, but sort of in a more casual, relaxed kind of way, was really, really enjoyable. And I've been Scott from Tepper's Paranormal, and I'll see you in the next video.